Well, thank you everyone for joining. I really commend you for taking the initiative to learn what your maternity leave benefits are and how to make the most of your options. So many moms out there don't know how to maximize their benefits and they end up going back to work after just 4 months. And the sad reality is most women aren't ready to go back to work after just 4 months. And it's not just a struggle for mom, it's also not an easy adjustment for baby. Every mom I've worked with has the same end goal, take a longer maternity leave with more paid benefits. And I'm happy to share that here in California, it's totally possible. The state of California just so happens to have many benefits, including PDL, SDI, PFL, bonding, CFRA, and FMLA. And the nice thing is, when you use your benefits and extensions correctly, you can take up to 7 months off with pay and with job protection. And in some unique circumstances, I've even helped some women take a 12-month long paid maternity leave. Before we get started, I'll quickly introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. I know I've messaged with some of you over email, but for those of you who don't know me, I am Shelly. I have a baby boy at home, so it's not too long ago I was in your shoes. I work in human resources and I build benefit plans and leave policies for employers. I also have credentials in California state leave laws. And on a much more personal note, maternity leave is something I really care about. It brings me joy to see moms get the time and the pay that they deserve to be with their babies. So, as a consultant, I share knowledge with other moms and moms to be because, like I said before, I know way too many moms who go back to work after just 4 months, and it's really too soon. Pregnancy is hard. Childbirth, breastfeeding, the sleepless nights, it's all really hard, and we need more than a few months to recover. Um, Also, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat because after this presentation, I'm going to go through and answer each and every one of your questions. I want you guys to walk away from today's session with a lot more clarity, better understanding about how it all works. So feel free to drop all your questions in the chat. You can be as detailed and as personal as you want if your employer is denying you benefits. Or if you were laid off during pregnancy, anything, I've seen it all before. I'll answer all your questions, so just drop them in the chat. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of background on why this is so complicated. So, employers usually don't make this information easy to find. And if you've tried doing your own research online, you may have ended up more confused. And that's because there are so many different benefits, and it's hard to figure out how they all work together, when to file claims, and how to get an extension in order to maximize your time off and your pay. Lots of women come to me after trying to sort it out on their own, and they are super confused. What you might not realize is that there are a number of factors at play preventing us from having access to maternity leave information. One issue is that the state benefits and the federal benefits are not aligned. FMLA, which is the federal parental leave benefit, is more rigid and restrictive with qualifications. But lucky for us, in California, we have our own state benefits, which are much more lenient and much more generous towards moms. California just happens to be one of the most progressive states in the country in terms of parental leave benefits available. The downside is it's one of the most difficult and most complex states to navigate. So many moms are in the dark on how to interpret the different federal and state benefits, especially because they contradict each other. I'm going to give you a quick example. I had a client last week who her employer told her that because she and her husband both work for the same employer, their parental leave is combined, meaning their total time off for mom and dad together couldn't exceed 12 weeks. Now, while that's true under federal policy, FMLA actually says that. It's not true in California. So she was thrilled when I told her that California eliminated that restriction back in 2021. So in the state of California, when two parents work for the same employer, they can each take their own leave without digging into the other one's leave. Now, that's just one of many examples where federal and state benefits are not aligned. And this is why so many of us are left confused when trying to figure out our benefits. So I'm here to help clarify and simplify all of it so you can cash out on all of the benefits and get the most time off and the most pay during your leave. So, another reason why you might be confused about your benefits is your employers aren't telling you that you're legally entitled to take 7 months off because your employers don't have any incentive to maximize your time off. Of course, there are some companies out there that act with great social responsibility, like Google and Netflix and Etsy, to name a few. But for most of our employers, our parental leave is nothing more than a disruption to business. And that's why I'm sharing all of the benefits you qualify for, how much money you'll make on your leave, how many weeks you can take, and how to maximize your maternity leave. Another challenge is HR departments are lacking knowledge on leave laws. So, HR is wrapped up in recruiting and hiring, training, compensation, and they're not trained specifically on leave laws. And the reason I know this is I have businesses reaching out to me asking me to train their HR department and guide them in developing parental leave policies. Parental leave laws in California are so convoluted and difficult to make sense out of that even HR professionals are seeking out guidance. And to be completely honest, I have yet to meet a single HR professional who's really well versed in this topic. The last point I want to bring up, and this one really throws me for a loop every time I share it, it's just sad. One of the biggest factors preventing us from getting maternity leave that we deserve are companies like Nestle and other infant formula companies are some of the biggest lobbyists to Congress so that you don't have a paid maternity leave. They don't want you to be at home with your baby because they're going to sell less formula. Same goes for baby food because moms who stay at home are more likely to breastfeed and more likely to make homemade purees. These companies estimate that maternity leave results in economic losses of $350 billion per year. I'm going to read you the quote directly from fortune.com. It reads, "Formula manufacturers frame formula as a solution for working mothers while lobbying against federal paid leave programs." So, all in all, there are so many factors working against us, whether it's contradicting state and federal policy, unsupportive employers, or politics and economics. All of these factors have one thing in common. They prevent us from having proper time off with our babies. And even in California, the state with the most progressive parental leave policy, it's still really hard to make sense of your benefits. For anyone joining, I see a few newbies have joined. So for anyone who's just joining now, please drop your questions in the chat because after this presentation, I'm going to go through the chat and answer your questions. And feel free to be as detailed and personal as you want in there. Examples I gave earlier were if you were laid off during pregnancy, or maybe you moved to California during pregnancy, or anything kind of odd like that. Feel free to put it in the chat and I will answer your questions at the end of the presentation. So, I mentioned before that maternity leave is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's such an important chapter in the parenting journey, and it really sets a foundation for a lifelong relationship with your baby. And that's why I do the work that I do. I want every mom out there to get the max time off and the max pay during her maternity leave. On average, women who work with me get an additional 2 months off and an additional $14,000 in paid state benefits. And I know that that extra time and money goes a really long way. It gives families a good start to a new chapter. All right, the reality is most moms come to me with the same goal in mind. How do I get more paid time off with my little one? So I want to share with you today some important tips to avoid some critical mistakes in your own maternity leave journey. So, first of all, know the difference between paid and unpaid leave. You've probably heard all of the acronyms FMLA, PDL, CFRA, SDI, PFL, PPLO. So I want to go over the benefits today so you know how each benefit serves you and how the different benefits interact. So there are really two types of leave. Unpaid leave over on the left is also known as job protection. So this guarantees that you get your same or equivalent job back after maternity leave. They can't fire you when you're out on leave, and they can't demote you or make you a janitor when you come back from leave. So you have a secure job waiting for you when you return to work. The second type of leave over on the right is paid leave, which is also known as wage replacement. And this reimburses you 70 to 90% of your gross salary when you're out on leave. You may have heard the term 60%. That's actually in the past. Back in 2024, there was a 60% rate, but now in 2025, as of January 1st, it went up to 70 to 90% of your gross pay. Now, if you think about it, 70 to 90% of your gross income is more than your net income. What that means is there are a lot of moms out there who are making more money on maternity leave than when they're actively working. Okay. In a private session, I can calculate your payout in the number of weeks or months, the dollar amount, so you know how much time you have off and where you stand financially during your leave. Given that we're in a group session, I'll keep this at a high level overview. So just know on maternity leave, you'll be protected by two leaves simultaneously, one to protect your job and the other one to get paid. And you'll see that these two columns run concurrently. One more tip on the different benefits is it's really important to never have two claims open at the same time. I had one client file her PFL claim before finishing out her SDI claim, and she made herself ineligible for those benefits, and her benefit check stopped coming in the mail. In the end, I was able to help her untangle the mess, but it took a long time and it was a lot of work. So it's really important to be aware and cautious of that. All right. Depending on which benefit we're looking at, it may cover um, different parts of your journey, whether it's pregnancy, childbirth, or recovery from childbirth. It's really important to understand your eligibility for the different benefits. So, depending on the benefits, it's going to cover a different part of the journey. So there's the disability phase, which is phase one, and that covers pregnancy, childbirth, and recovery from childbirth. Then you move on to phase two. That's after you've recovered from your disability. Phase two is bonding. So at that point, you're going out to play dates, mommy and me classes, the park, you're bonding with your child. By the way, family vacation is also a completely legitimate use of your bonding time. That's family bonding in its essence. Okay. So essentially, anyone who's welcoming a new child into their life is eligible for some form of paid benefits. Pregnancy in and of itself makes you eligible for PDL or pregnancy disability leave because pregnancy is considered a disability in this context. So, with that in mind, pregnancy disability benefits are only applicable to the birthing parent. In other words, you, pregnant women. Now, in contrast with the birthing parent is what's called the non-birthing parent. And a non-birthing parent is typically a dad, so let your partners know they too are eligible for paid benefits. The reason we use the term non-birthing parent is it's not always just dad. The term also refers to anyone becoming a parent via adoption or surrogacy as well. Also, same-sex couples. The last thing, and actually the most crucial in determining your eligibility for benefits, is whether you're paying into California SDI through your payroll tax deductions. If you're going to walk away from today's Zoom call with only one takeaway, let this be it. You are only eligible for paid state benefits if you're paying into California SDI through your payroll tax withholdings. If you aren't sure, take a look at your pay stubs and you'll find deductions. This snippet right here is an example. You'll see on the very last line it says California SDI tax. So that's what you need to look for. Look for anything along the lines of California SDI, SDI, or DI. It's your golden ticket into a paid maternity leave. This part is so critical, actually, that I won't take clients without it. I need a client to be paying into SDI in order to help them maximize those paid state benefits. But don't worry, unless you're working for a public school or religious organization, you're probably paying into California SDI in your paycheck without even knowing it. All right, it's now not enough that you, the employee, meets eligibility requirements. Your employer also must meet what's called employer eligibility. And that's because certain sectors are exempt from having to provide their employees with parental leave. For example, nonprofit religious organizations like a church would be exempt. Public and charter schools also are not eligible. Smaller organizations are also exempt from having to provide their employees with a parental leave. So, for example, if your employer has four employees only, you might not be eligible for PDL or CFRA. There's a lot more to eligibility, like the number of hours you've worked prior to going on leave, and so much more. And while I'd love to do a personalized assessment for each and every one of you today, it's just not realistic in a group session like this. So I leave that level of detail for a private consultation where I assess your eligibility, I look at your income history, employment history, and I help you maximize your time off and pay from each benefit. And we'll do it correctly on the first go and not have complications that are harder to untangle later. But given that we're in a group session, I leave all of that personal detail for a personal consult, and I keep this session at a high level overview so you have context and you know what to look out for as you progress through your own maternity leave. All right, now that we've established your eligibility, let's talk about my favorite part, extensions. So, with extensions, your total maternity leave can go up to 7 months long with pay and with job security. In some unique cases, I've helped women take up to 12 months of paid leave. Of course, every woman's case looks different and it's based on so many different variables. Whether your delivery is vaginal or C-section, whether baby comes early or late, whether you plan to go back to work or stay at home. There are so many variables. So every maternity leave is unique, and I work with women to build out a roadmap with specific claim filing dates and extension deadlines, and it's personalized and tailored to each individual. So, a bit on extensions. Pregnancy is such a beautiful journey. But let's be real, it can also be incredibly tough on your mind, body, and soul. It's okay to feel exhausted and overwhelmed at times. Remember to take the maternity leave that you deserve so you have plenty of time to rest and recover because your well-being is just as important as your baby's. If you feel you need more time off, it's completely valid. You don't need to return to work before you're ready. If extensions are filed correctly at the right time with the right practitioner, your leave can be up to 7 months long with pay and with job security. It's even possible to take a 12-month paid maternity leave under specific circumstances. I walk women through navigating extensions, including timing and deadlines, and I share a list of EDD approved medical practitioners and healthcare providers who are authorized to provide extensions, as well as a list of conditions approved by the EDD that qualify you for an extension. I also prepare a personalized roadmap with claim filing dates and deadlines so new moms don't miss out on any pay or time off during their maternity leave. Recently, I had a client who felt unsure or guilty about taking more time off, and I told her the same thing I would tell you. Remember that you've paid into this. California SDI is an insurance policy. The I in SDI stands for insurance. And you've been contributing to this program with every paycheck, so it's there for you when you need it. Okay. Also, remember that you deserve it because recovering from pregnancy takes time and you deserve the rest and recovery. It's okay to take care of yourself. All right, the last tip that I want to drive home is communicate your maternity leave plans with your employer in writing. And I emphasize in writing because verbal agreements often aren't binding. And after a few months, it's common for people to forget what was discussed. From a legal standpoint, documenting your leave plans, dates, and intended return to work date in writing is crucial for many reasons. First of all, you have a clear record of your intentions and agreements with your employer, which can prevent misunderstandings or disputes later on. This documentation can serve as evidence of your compliance with leave laws or company policies, which protects you as the employee. Also, having your leave plans in writing helps ensure that you receive the full benefits and the full protections that you're entitled to under state and federal law. Documenting your leave plans in writing can provide you with legal protection and peace of mind during this important time in your life. Time and time again, I see the same scenario play out. Around the 4 month mark, the employer reaches out and says, "Hey, your leave is ending and you're expected to return to work." I've helped women with employers who want them back earlier than originally agreed on. And I've also helped women with employers who say they never agreed to certain benefits. And this is where having everything written down is so important because after a few months, people forget what was said and it's easy for things to get mixed up. So having a clear record of what was agreed on helps protect your rights and makes sure you get the support you need during this time. All right, ladies, before I wrap up, one last tidbit. I mentioned that I offer private consultations and I provide you with your benefit calculations, dollar amount, and duration and number of weeks. I also provide personalized roadmaps, and this is valuable because each maternity leave timeline is unique and will have its own unique dates and deadlines on when to apply, file your claim, provide medical certification, request an extension. And so this roadmap helps you move seamlessly through the process. So I wanted to give you a sneak peek into what that looks like. Now, remember, this is not a one size fits all. This roadmap is tailored for you based on your work history, employer benefits, your postpartum plans. Like if you prioritized paid leave only or all time off, regardless whether it's paid or not. Also, whether you plan to go back to work or not. There are so many variables. So let's take a quick look at an example maternity leave roadmap. So on the leftmost column, we have the date. Second column is what's happening at that stage in the journey. The third column is her action item. This serves as a to-do list. Out on the right, we have paid benefits in green, think green for money, and job protection benefits in blue. So this mom could jump to any date in her maternity leave and know exactly what benefit is paying her and what benefit protects her job and how much pay she can expect. Now, before you all take screenshots of this, remember when I said that this is not a one size fits all? So I'm going to point out two examples that are really nuanced and specific to this mom. So you can see in this column over here, this mom received a paid parental leave benefit from her employer. Now, not all employers offer a paid parental leave benefit. If you happen to be in this boat where your employer offers pay, it is really important to coordinate the pay. Essentially, if you make too much money from your employer during maternity leave, you make yourself ineligible for the paid state benefits. So you'll either see a reduction in benefits or you'll become ineligible altogether. So it's really important to coordinate employer pay during maternity leave so you don't lose eligibility. Okay, so this roadmap is tailored for her and her case and how to maximize her benefits given that option, the maternity leave benefit paid out by the employer. Okay, a second example of what makes this roadmap unique for this mom is while most moms start their maternity leave 4 weeks before their due date, this particular mom benefited more from working a few extra weeks to maximize her earnings in that quarter. So that was unique to her case, her income history, and it just made the most sense for her. Okay, so this roadmap is really unique. It's based on so many variables. Maybe you're interested only in paid leave and you're not interested in the unpaid benefits. So that's going to shift around your timeline. If you don't plan to return to work after maternity leave, again, this timeline is going to look totally different. If your employer offers benefits, like the example we just saw, in addition to the state benefits, this roadmap, again, is going to look really different. So I just want to emphasize again that this is not a one size fits all, and it's tailored to fit an individual's preferences and eligibility and background and history. I may have mentioned before, but I will mention again, I'm super proud to share that the average woman who works with me gets an additional 2 months off and an additional $14,000 in paid state benefits. So if you're interested in building a customized roadmap for your own maternity leave, feel free to email me. I would be happy to help. All right, we are approaching the end of the presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and dive into the chat and answer your questions. Okay, so first question is from Jacqueline. I got a letter from HR stating I don't qualify for FMLA since I didn't complete the hours for the year. Is there anything I can do? Jacqueline, I need a bit more information. I'm going to unmute you. I need to know your due date and when you started that job, whether you're part-time or full-time, and how many hours you've worked until now, or really until baby's born. So let me unmute you real quick. Hold on. Okay, go for it.
Hi, so happy to be here. So happy that I found you. Okay, so I've had this job for 12 years. I My due date is supposed to be October 16th, but I'm having triplets naturally. So my doc was like, late August, early September is when we can have you deliver. I also had a baby last March, so he's a year and a couple months, and I did. I had a long maternity leave last time, and so I think that's why I didn't get the hours I was supposed to. So my last day of work was the 22nd. So last week sometime. And what was the other question you needed?
I need to know when the babies are born and at the point that you were at your last day of work, how many hours did you work?
32 for my last week
Um, you worked 32 hours
for the week.
per week. Okay.
And
Um,
then the due date, I don't have one because we haven't set one yet.
mhm. Okay. So there's a lot of things going on here.
Uh-huh.
So I'm gonna also mute you again. Sorry, it's just there's a little bit of background noise, but feel free to just message in the chat if you want to talk again. Okay, perfect. Okay, so a few things that are going on here. So I'll start with the most general information. Um, FMLA is the federal benefit, and the federal benefit is not generous at all. In fact, for the most part in California, FMLA is pretty irrelevant. And that's because when there's contradicting benefits like CFRA and FMLA, state and federal, always the more generous one applies. So in California, CFRA and PDL supersede FMLA. That's what makes FMLA, for the most part, irrelevant. Now, it still exists, it just silently runs in the background of your leave. It doesn't dictate or determine what your leave looks like in any way. Now, if they're on your case about the number of hours worked prior to going on leave, you're going to have to do a little bit of math. It needs to add up to 1,250 hours in the year prior to when you stopped working. Not when the baby was born, but when you stopped working. Now, 1,250 hours, just to make it simple, that's approximately 7 months of full-time work. Okay, so if you qualify for that, you qualify for CFRA. And then there's another benefit called PDL, Pregnancy Disability Leave. And for PDL, there's almost no requirements. It's actually really nice. You only needed to work 1 day prior to going on leave and you get all the benefits. Okay. Um, without knowing exactly how many hours you worked, it's hard for me to tell you exactly how much you're eligible for. You might want to consider a private one-on-one, especially with triplets. You're going to want to maximize all that time off and all the paid benefits. I hope the information I shared gave some sort of foundation and context. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question because I see we have a lot of questions here. Lindsay, I am self-employed through my corporation. I pay myself at the end of the year. Lindsay, do you pay yourself on payroll like a W-2 employee? I might need to unmute you or just put it in the chat. And I'll continue reading through your question. My CPA did not pay into my SDI benefits and has gone MIA. Oh, that's a bummer. Am I eligible for any paid state benefits? My baby is currently 4 months old. I'm going to scroll down. You put yes. So if you are paying into, if you are on payroll and W-2, you should have SDI on there. Sometimes it's called something different. Like it can be called disability employee or California disability. There's so many different variations. But if you're on payroll W-2, most chances are you're paying into SDI. A lot of people don't even realize it and they're paying into SDI. So maybe double check that detail. If the answer is no, and you weren't paying into SDI, let me read what you just wrote. When I spoke to EDD, they said my social security didn't show that I paid into SDI. Unfortunately, that makes you ineligible for the paid state benefits. I'm so sorry to hear, and it sounds like just a clerical error, like administrative error. That's really a bummer. But yeah, you need to be paying into the program in order to get the benefits later. So, Lindsay, I'm really sorry to hear. If it gives you a bit more peace of mind, feel free to send me a pay stub and I'll look and confirm that that's the case. But it sounds like it's a no, considering that your CPA said no and the EDD is saying no. So it sounds like a no, but if you'd like extra peace of mind, I'll be happy to look at a pay stub if you want to email it to me. My email's on the screen. Okay. Next question is from Felicia. I am a substitute teacher, so I only pick up sub jobs when I want to, but I do pick up like I am a full-time employee. Am I still eligible for any of the leaves, paid or unpaid? Felicia, you are likely eligible for all the paid benefits. Unpaid is interesting. You would need to. The question really is who is your employer when it comes to unpaid leave? Because remember, unpaid leave is job protection. So the question is who is protecting your job? Do you work for a company that's just a bunch of substitute teachers? Do you work for one specific school or perhaps a school district? If you have one employer, then you should be eligible for the unpaid benefits or the job protection benefits as well. Okay. Next question is from, I'm sure I'm saying this wrong, Vera Sovyuk. Sorry if I'm butchering names. Okay, question is, I have two jobs. I'm a federal employee and don't pay into SDI, but also a caregiver for my mom where I do pay into SDI. But the majority of my income comes from the federal job. I'm worried that if I get wage replacement through my caregiver job, it will be very low. You're right, it would likely be very low. I'm also worried I will lose my federal job if I take leave beyond the 12 weeks of PPL substituted for FMLA. This is a good question. You're very much on the right track. So your wage replacement benefits are going to be a calculation that's based off of the SDI. So if you were paid very little on the caregiver job, then likely you're going to get little benefits there, unfortunately. And then the second part of it is your second job, the federal job. It comes down to looking at that employer policy and seeing what they give you. I I imagine they're not giving you any of the California benefits. If it's a federal job and you're not paying into SDI, which means that you're down to 12 weeks. And for anyone else out there who's curious, if someone works outside of California, maybe Texas, for example, doesn't have any state benefits, then you're falling back on FMLA, the federal benefit, which is really not generous. It's 12 weeks unpaid. So just job protection, not generous at all. So yeah, for you, it sounds like that's the case. It sounds like it's going to be 12 weeks of job protection with the federal job, with 12 weeks of very little pay coming from SDI. Okay. If you want a deeper dive, I would be happy to read through your employer policy, see if there's any wiggle room there to get the California benefits like PDL and CFRA, and help you maximize your leave. Okay. Next question is from Teeny. Are there any protection or benefits if you are with an employer for less than a year? I'm about to start a new job, but we do not want to wait any longer to try to conceive. Yeah, so PDL, pregnancy disability leave, is applicable if you've only worked one day for your employer. So it sounds like regardless, you're going to get PDL. And then the other side of the equation is how much pay you received. It doesn't have to be just this job, it can be previous jobs too, where you were paying into SDI because the calculation of your paid benefit is based on, it actually goes 18 months back into your employment history. So depending on the previous jobs, it would also affect or influence how much you're making in paid benefits. Okay. Next question is from Malet. Do state employees pay into disability? I qualified for the 6 weeks, but have been using my own time since then. I don't see anything on my paycheck. So in your paycheck, under payroll tax withholdings, um, it sounds like you don't see anything there, but just to double check, um, you should look for a line item that says SDI or California Disability or Disability Employee. If you see that, it's indication that you receive paid benefits. So you can receive pay from the state. But the other factor, the other piece of the puzzle is job protection benefits. So then the question is, does your employer, or state employer, give you any of the job protection benefits, which gives you essentially protected time off? Okay. So it's kind of your responsibility as the employee to coordinate the job protection and the pay, and you want them running concurrently, right? At any given point in time in your maternity leave, you want to receive paid benefits and job protection benefits. Okay. Hope that helps. All right, question from Jenna. Are the 7 months of paid leave the max 4 months of SDI allowed in California and 3 months of California PFL? You're very much on the right track. The second part is actually CFRA. CFRA goes 12 weeks. Here's the thing. While that very high level is correct, there's a lot of complications that can happen through the process. And that's because there are a lot of critical dates and deadlines that women miss. For example, extension deadlines. So usually 6 weeks postpartum, your disability comes to a close, or 8 weeks C-section. So there are ways to coordinate, and there's actually four entities to coordinate amongst. There's your employer, yourself, the patient, the EDD, which pays you, and your healthcare practitioner. So you need to coordinate amongst the three entities and make sure that everything's aligned, all the dates, the deadlines, because if you miss one of those deadlines, it can cost you thousands of dollars. Okay. All right. Question from Teeny. You said you need 1,250 hours of work for CFRA. Do you have to be with the employer for 1 year as well for that job protection, or just 7 months? So it's both. One requirement is 12 months of employment, and the other requirement is 1,250 hours worked. Um, there's kind of an interesting creative way to go about the 12 months. Um, I don't want to call it a loophole, but there is a creative way around it. If you email me, we can talk more about that. Okay. All right. Question from Kate. What is the difference between paid family leave benefits and disability benefits, and can I apply for both? Okay. So this is such a common question and causes so much confusion. I'm going to try to keep it super simple. Think of your maternity leave as two phases. Phase one is considered disability. And the reason it's phase one is because it covers all the physical stuff. So, pregnancy, childbirth, recovery from childbirth, all the physical stuff that you're going through is considered disability or pregnancy disability. And so it has to come first. It's phase one. When you're done recovering, you feel better, you have your energy back, feel a bit more like yourself. You move on to phase two, which is bonding. So in phase two, you can go out to play dates, family vacation, park, mommy and me classes. You're really bonding with your child. So those are the two phases. Now, each phase has a paid benefit that comes along with it. So when you're in the disability phase, you're getting PDL for job protection and SDI for pay. And when you're in the bonding phase, you're getting CFRA for job protection and PFL for pay. So yes, you can apply for both. It's really important to not apply for both at the same time. If you do this, you can make yourself ineligible, lose your benefits, lose eligibility. The checks will stop coming in the mail. So it's really important to just coordinate it all correctly. Okay. Um, Felicia, I just saw the second part of your question that you work for one school district. Yeah, you're most likely eligible for everything then because you have one employer. So that makes it really simple. Okay. And then I think this is a follow-up question, Mallet. I have tons of protected time off. Just want to see if I can get more pay. Okay, so then um, I'm now forgetting the first part of your question. I think you're the one that had the two jobs where one is a caregiver. Let me scroll up and just make sure. I'm having trouble piecing together all the different stories and work situations. There's so many of you. Okay, yeah, if you email me, it might be easier. You can just give me like the entire history in one swoop, and I'll give you answers there. Um, okay, I see two more questions. One from Jenna Davis. Do you apply for SDI start date 4 or 5 weeks prior to due date? So the correct time to file your SDI claim is week 36 of pregnancy. So that's 4 weeks before your due date. This is pretty standard. Most OBs are going to sign off on your disability claim at that point. Now, if you have any unique scenario, perhaps you're going on leave early because you have a pregnancy condition, or maybe something else. Maybe you got laid off, so you're going on leave early. Or maybe you're going on leave late. You're working all the way up until when the baby's born. Either one of those scenarios, if you start early or you start late, has sort of a domino effect on all the different dates and deadlines and benefits. So if you're in one of those situations where you're not starting right on time, it might be a good idea to have a personal consultation. Okay. And a question from Ashley, can I get access to the recording? Yes, I can send this recording out to all of you. I might trim off the Q&A just for privacy of everyone on here. So maybe I'll just stop the recording right when I finish that presentation because some of you shared some personal details and I don't want to distribute that. Okay. All right, guys, I'm at the very bottom of the chat, so no more questions. I'm going to wish you all a lovely rest of your weekend and congratulations with your pregnancies, or some of you have babies already, so congratulations. And I hope this is really helpful. All right, take care. Bye.